Dear Yair Lapid, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and guests, it is a great pleasure and honor for us to welcome you, dear Yair Lapid, on behalf of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom here in the headquarters of the Free Democrats in the center of Berlin. It is an event at short notice, as the program of your visit to Berlin became clear only a few days ago. We are all the more happy, dear Yair Lapid, that you took the time to drop by for a keynote and a discussion. We are very much looking forward to the next 60 minutes in which we will listen to your keynote and the free-floating discussion with Anna Staroselski that will follow. A warm welcome to you, Yair Lapid. Please forgive me that I do not address and welcome all those friends whom I see in the audience. It's wonderful that the hall is packed. And as I said, we are looking forward to the evening. Well, I will be extremely brief in my opening words. I don't really need to introduce you, Yair Lapid, to the audience. You have been Minister of Finance, you have been Foreign Minister, and you have been Prime Minister of Israel, and you are currently leader of the opposition in the Knesset. Besides, you are the leader of Yesh Atid, the centrist party, which is also, I dare to mention this, member of Liberal International, and as Deputy President of Liberal International, I can say that we are proud of having Yesh Atid with us as a member in our global liberal family. In your time in the government, you have brought together the most diverse coalition in Israeli history. In this respect, as in others, you have become a role model for bringing together different democratic forces and at the same time standing courageously in the center of the political spectrum, something which is difficult enough, I can tell you, in all democratic societies. In the darkest hours of Israel, after the cruel terrorist massacre of Hamas, of October 7th, you put all your energy into unifying the country and after the shock of terror, but you also made clear that you would not join the security cabinet as long as extremists were still part of the Netanyahu government. You have openly criticized the current prime minister for making the country slide into a situation in which a Hamas attack of that horrible magnitude was possible, and you have called for early elections. Ladies and gentlemen, I finish my brief introduction with a word on my own country, on Germany. Since October 7th, the world has changed for us Germans. I think it's not an exaggeration when I say this. I am content to say that in Germany, all major democratic parties of the country firmly support Israel, from the moderate left to the moderate right, including, and I may say in particular my own party, the centrist Free Democrats. The right of existence of Israel and the right of Israel to defend itself are out of the question. They are and remain part of our raison d'etat. That said, we are deeply concerned to observe massive waves of anti-Semitism on our streets, and recently also, very sadly, at our universities. This is completely unacceptable, and we will not stop speaking up against those new waves of hatred. We will continue to show our solidarity with Israel, as many of us did in demonstrations in Berlin and elsewhere, together with our friends from the German Israeli Society and other associations that support the friendship between our nations. In this respect, I would like to extend my thanks to Anna Staroselski, our liberal friend and speaker of the Werte-Initiative, literally the Initiative for Values. Early on, after October 7th, she prominently organized a major demonstration of solidarity with Israel at Brandenburg Gate, and further events followed. Dear Anna, thank you very much for your great efforts. We are proud to have you with us in our liberal family. Well, so much, ladies and gentlemen, for my brief introduction. Dear Yair Lapid, we are very much looking forward to your speech, to be followed by the discussion with Anna Staroselski. Dear Yair, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I know I'm among friends. I know that you share our pain over the events of October 7th. I came here to tell you on German soil, we will win this war. On the 7th of October, Jews were murdered, babies were massacred, women were raped, the elderly were burned alive, families were taken hostage. The next day, October the 8th, anti-Semites already told the world, like always, that the Jews were to be blamed for being murdered. We will not let them, and it will not help them. We will rise from the ashes and from the grief and start again. The state of Israel wasn't found with the belief that anti-Semitism will disappear. It was founded so that we can tell anti-Semites they can go screw themselves. It was founded so we can tell the world we will defend ourselves by ourselves in any way we must. Two people influenced my life. Although they are both family and both loved each other very much, they are the two most different people on earth. My late father, Joseph Tommy Lapid, may memory be blessed, and my wonderful daughter, Yair Lapid, she's 27 years old. My father was fat. My daughter is beautiful. My father was loud. My daughter is quiet. My father was European by culture, American in his understanding of democracy, and Jewish by destiny. My daughter was born in Israel and lived in Israel all her life. My father was a man of words. He read and wrote books. He had a very successful popular radio program. When he would rise to speak in the Knesset, when he served as Minister of Justice, the building would be on alert. Who was he going to insult with a sharp wit this time? Who would be bombarded by arguments? My daughter doesn't speak. She's a young woman with special needs, medium to low functioning autistic. She lives with 8 friends like her in a house near ours, and we meet her almost every day. When I meet her, sometimes she holds my hand and we sit there in silence. Those are the most blissful moments of my life. Aside from being family, there is one more thing that connects my father and my daughter, and that is from the day they were born, there were people who wanted to kill them, and they didn't understand why. My father was a boy in the Budapest ghetto. His father, my grandfather, was murdered in the Mauthausen concentration camp. Of the 21 Jewish students or children in my father's class, 14 were killed in the camps and in the ghettos. He didn't understand why is it that so many people want him to die. What did he ever do to them? In the past few months, a few times a day, sirens blare in the neighborhood where I live. And missiles are fired towards our home, and I need to convince my daughter to go into the bomb shelter. She does not understand why. We hear loud explosions, which scares her. She knows something bad is happening, but I do not know what does she think about it. I do not always know what I think about it. I'm curious to know, what do you think about it? About the fact that the world wanted to kill my father when he was a 13-year-old boy, and the world now wants to kill my daughter, who has never done anything and is not capable of doing anything to anyone. My father did not control the world's media or the global banking system. He was actually not very good with money. My daughter does not run Hollywood or Wall Street. That would be hard to do without words. My father did not hate Christians. He grew up with them. My daughter is not Islamophobic. The only Muslim she knows is Hussein, who works in the house where she lives. He is a friend, he's my friend too. My father was not a colonialist. He was a refugee. My daughter is not an occupier. She's a survivor. I do not know why there are people all over the world in every generation that hate and want to kill my father and my daughter. They always have different excuses. Sometimes because we are communists, sometimes because we are capitalists, sometimes because we isolate, sometimes because we assimilate, sometimes because we are people without the land, sometimes because we dare to create a country for ourselves. After the Holocaust, the world have said, never again. And then it happened again, and again. And then it happened on October the 7th. There will always be people who want to murder Jews. The answer is not to explain to them why they are wrong. The answer is to make sure they cannot. I do not know why people hate Jews so much, but we are done running away. My answer to anti-Semitism, to the hatred of Jews, is a strong Jewish state with a strong Jewish army, which says to those who hate us, we will not be victims. Israel will wage this war until we win. It will wage this war until the last of the hostages is home with their families. It will wage this war until the last of those who were displaced can go back home. We will not be refugees in our own country. Israel will fight, because if we do not win this war, it will happen again. Hamas says so publicly. They do not regret what happened on October the 7th. They have no remorse. They have said again and again, we are pleased we killed all those babies. We are pleased we raped those women. If we get the chance, we will do it again. They will not get the chance. We will not let them. Our war is not with the people of Gaza. We are doing and will do everything we can to avoid harm innocent civilians. We are doing and will do everything we can to work with our friends in the world, Germany being among the closest and most important of them, to give Gaza a better future after Hamas is eradicated. But still, this will not be a pleasant war. It won't look good. There is no such thing as a pleasant war. Definitely not against an enemy which uses women and children as human shields. That is exactly the reason why we must win, for our children and for theirs. I hear the criticism against us, and it sounds horribly familiar, horribly ancient. 2 weeks ago, the United Nations Secretary General invoked Article 99, a rarely used UN article which allows him to call a special meeting of the Security Council. He used it to call a meeting about the Israeli attack on Gaza. That article wasn't used for decades. It wasn't used when 500,000 people were killed in Syria and 11 million lost their homes. It wasn't used when 4 million people were killed in Congo. It wasn't used when 500,000 were killed in Darfur. It wasn't used when Russia invaded Ukraine and the whole world was dragged into the war. The only time it was used was when the Jews were murdered, and then it was used against the Jews. It was done in your name. You shouldn't agree to it. You must raise a voice against it. I know you're not anti-Semites, of course. Our friendship, the friendship I feel in this room is a flicker of light in the darkness. But there are anti-Semites marching in your streets. And there are anti-Semites in your media. And there are anti-Semites in the United Nations. And if we don't fight back together, it won't only hurt us, it will also stain you forever. Israel will fight this war against Hamas in Gaza, against the anti-Semites, against hypocrites and liars and useful idiots in the campuses. And together with our friends in the world, together with you, we will win. We will win because we've seen what defeat looks like. We have no other choice. We know what risk we cannot afford to take. The risk is that my daughter will be killed. And my father is not going to allow this to happen. Thank you very much.
Dear Mr. Lapid, thank you very much for your very powerful speech, and thank you everyone for coming. I just wanted to add that as Werte-Initiative, we usually focus on domestic politics, but since we're a Jewish organization and Jews feel a very strong bond to Israel, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to have this conversation with you. So thank you to the Naumann Stiftung for this invitation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I think in your speech you already mentioned, but I would like to ask you again. Nowadays we hear very often the slogan, never again, and never again is now. What does this mean to you?
These are actually twins, the never again and Israel has a right to defend itself. I had at my office a few years back a very smart lady she used to be the Foreign Minister of Australia. And this was during one of the attacks on Israel, because, as you said, the never again thing always comes back when something is happening again. And she started the conversation by telling me, you know, I support the right of Israel to defend itself. And I said, why are you saying this? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, are you going to France and to say that you support the right of France to defend itself? Do you go to Britain and say, we support Britain's right to exist? Why do you always say that about Israel? And since she was a very smart lady, she smiled and she said, I understand. What you mean is, the reason I'm mentioning it is because it's questionable. Because, yes, we have the right to defend ourselves, but there will be people who will tell you we don't, or they want to limit our right to defend ourselves, or they want to decide in what terms are we allowed to defend ourselves. And this is just, 1 inch away of deciding whether or not we're allowed to exist. So the answer is, and this, as I mentioned in my speech, we're not going to ask them. We don't need permission. This is why Israel was established, for us to be able to determine our destiny and our future by ourselves.
Thank you. Israel is at war. It's the 7th day today. And the current Israeli government, but you also mentioned that this war will go on until Hamas is destroyed and all hostages are back with their families. After the devastating Hamas attack, you, as an opposition leader, you suggested to create a professional and reduced emergency government. And you said this war won't be easy, it won't be short. It has strategic consequences that we haven't seen for many years. There's a serious risk that it will become a multi-front war. What do you think, how long this war will take? And do you still believe that this could become a multi-front war?
Yes. I will, with your permission, start with the first part of your question about the reason I didn't join the unity war is because of, as you mentioned, the extremists within the government. As we all know, extremists are very good at marching and shouting, but they're not very good at running countries, especially not countries in the state of war. Our state of war is, at the beginning, always looks simplistic. Meaning, and yes, there's the simple truth of this is a war between good and evil. And this is a very obvious good and evil. But wars, strategic goals are always very complicated. And for this, you need a centrist government that will address the issues with sense and logic and a deeper understanding of reality as it is. So, and this leads to the second part of your question. Yes, there is a possibility of this becoming a multi-arena war. We have a very limited scale, I don't know if to call it a war, but at least the tension up north with Hezbollah in Lebanon. They are firing at our villages on a daily basis. We are firing back, and we're trying to maintain this as a limited conflict, but this can go in flames every moment. And also, there are huge tensions within the territories within the West Bank, also inflamed by Hamas. There's an effort of Hamas to make the West Bank part of the conflict, and also by extreme settlers who has this Armageddonic vision of the war as a path towards annexation and all the things we don't want to happen. So there's a lot of forces who are still trying to corner us into a multi-arena war, and we are the more sensible parts of the Israeli society, along with the Americans and our European friends, and the German government is involved in a very positive way. We're trying to avoid this and make sure that we're going to deal with Gaza now and nothing else.
You mentioned it already. I just want to bring a few numbers here. Between the 22nd of November and the 2nd of December, there was an opinion poll carried out by the Palestinian Center of Policy and Survey Research. And they found that the support for Hamas had more than tripled in the West Bank compared to 3 months ago. 70% of the responders said armed struggle was the best means of ending the Israeli occupation. And by contrast, the support of the President Abbas had dropped sharply following the Hamas attacks. And the survey found that more than 90% of the Palestinians in the West Bank are calling for his resignation. So we're also seeing that a majority of the Palestinians living in the West Bank are supporting the Hamas terror attack that happened on October 7th. With that in mind, how is it possible to talk about a future? And what is your vision for the time after the war?
Well,
What needs to be done?
how is it possible to talk about the future? Well, the future has the tendency to arrive. And if we will not deal with this, this means we have decided to leave the problem to our children. I have children your age, I think.
I heard, yeah.
Yeah. And this is bad leadership and bad parenthood to take the biggest problem we have, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and say, okay, this is devastating, this is despairing, we see this number, we read these numbers, and we're going to do nothing about this. Now, it doesn't mean I have a simple solution. The two big theories of the last couple of 3 decades in Israel has collapsed. The theory of the Israeli left was that we can sign a piece of paper and there will be peace between us and the Palestinians. Well, this is not going to work. As the numbers you have quoted shows, the Palestinian movement, the independence movement, has never adjusted itself to the presence of Jews in Israel. What is from the river to the sea means? When they go and chant from the river to the sea, from the river to the sea, it means ethnic cleansing of Jews from the state of Israel. On the other hand, the theory of the Israeli right, or extreme right, that we can manage the conflict forever, has hit us as badly as possible in October the 7th. And therefore, on the long term, we need to find a smart way to separate from the Palestinians. Right now, our goals are way more limited. We need to eradicate Hamas from Gaza. We need to find a way to have the right composition of moderate Arab states, international community, and some involvement of the PA in order to rerun some sort of governance in Gaza. But on the future, I cannot allow myself as the father of 3, and I'm going to be a grandfather in 3 months, to do, oh, thank you. I didn't do anything to make this happen. I cannot allow to ignore the biggest problem we have. Otherwise, it's bad leadership.
Thank you. We're seeing nowadays more and more signs that a strategic axis between Iran, Russia, and Northern Korea is developing. The Hamas is being financed by Iran and was attacking Israel also with Russian arms, and Ukraine was targeted with Iranian drones too. How would you describe the strategic alliance between Russia, Iran, and North Korea, and how does this affect Israel's foreign policy?
Well, actually, this acts of evil is even wider, because Hezbollah in Lebanon is involved, because Syria is part of this, because Hamas is part of this. It's a vicious combination of the interests of Russia that is cynically run by Putin. He was the first to understand that this takes the focus away from the Ukrainian situation and might serve him well. And besides, he became quite dependable in the supply of Iranian weapons and ammunitions, especially drones. So we are seeing now a group of countries, and again, right now, Turkey is not playing a very positive role as well, if you've listened to the last horrific declarations of President Erdogan. So what we are seeing now is a group of countries, for very different reasons, sharing one goal, and the goal is destabilizing the Middle East in order to either change the focus from Europe or as part of what they look at as a holy war against Jews that will lead to the holy war against Christians. And in the meantime, of course, they'll do what they always do, which is kill mostly moderate Muslims. So it's geopolitically, what we're seeing now is the creation of a new, I don't know, call it a new Cold War, but a new axe of power that is serving for various reasons the same goal.
And how does this influence Israel's foreign policy?
I think what we should aspire to is strengthening the alliance we have with Western Europe and the United States, which we do. But the idea that you can ride the tiger, so to speak, which is have a dialogue with terrorists or have a dialogue with countries that have sworn into this kind of evilness, did not prove itself. And the only thing that made them back up in the past is just a strong alliance that is firmly standing to them and saying, you know what, we're not going to have this. One of the key moments in the last crisis is the moment the two American carriers have approached the Israeli shores and the Israeli and the Lebanese shores in a demonstration of power. These are people who understand power and who will not back unless power is involved. Justice and democracy needs to be protected every now and then. I mean, there's very few countries in the world who understand this better than Germany.
Yeah. For Germany, the Russian war on Ukraine was a turning point. Chancellor Scholz, he called it Zeitenwende. Maybe you heard him say that. And it's changed also the foreign policy and security policy in Germany. And Russia, we know, is working together with Iran. What would be, from your point of view, necessary for Europe and for Germany in their containment strategy towards Iran and Russia?
Well, I think all of us understand now the containment policy didn't work. Again, the history of the 20th and the 21st century is the history of people who tried to contain threats and realized in the end it cannot be contained. Either you stand up to it or not. Either you're defending your way of life or not. Either you are willing. I mean, why was it that the Ukrainian war was such a wake-up call? Because Europe felt they are over it. It's not going to happen again. It's going to happen to some people, out there in the Middle East, all those people that we see on television. It's only going to happen to them. It's not going to happen here again. We've seen evil at its most, and we have learned the lesson. No, you didn't see evil at its most. Evil has a tendency to come back, and it only stops when good people are out there saying, we're going to stop you. So, there was a chilling moment in the beginning of the Russian-Ukrainian war, when it wasn't a chilling moment for me, it was a chilling moment for a lot of people, when Germany has announced they're going to build an army now, they're going to invest 100 billion euros in building an army for it. And this is a country that was semi-pacifistic after the 40s. But we have no other choice. We need to have the necessary power to confront religious fanaticism on one hand and geopolitical cynicism on the other.
Israel is currently facing international pressure, which has been expressed, you also mentioned it earlier, mainly by the UN. People are also calling for ceasefire, and also Israel's close allies such as the United States and even Germany too. Do you think Israel is increasingly being isolated in the United Nations? And what do you think why that is?
Well, I've addressed this in my speech. People tend to forget, first of all, that the United Nations is not a democratic institute. You don't have to be a democracy in order to be part of the UN. And the decision process is not democratic. I mean, many times. This is why I've described to you in my speech what happened with Article 99. That cannot be explained in any other way than what I called horrible ancient reasons. Yeah, it's the new speak for anti-Semitism. But we do not feel isolated. I tell you, it's not even a story, it's an anecdote, it's a true anecdote, but it will explain why I'm here, okay? There was a famous experiment they did with the game theory. I think it was in Yale University, I'm not sure. They said, they took a bunch of students and they said, listen, you have to meet a certain person in New York in a certain day. And this is it, this is all you know. And you have to decide where you go. So the majority of the students went to Grand Central Station at 12 o'clock, because this is the time you have the most chance to meet somebody. Except from the teacher, she went to the public library. And somebody asked her, said, well, why did you go to the public library? Because the chance you'll meet the person we're talking about is very small. She said, yes, but the people I want to meet are in the public library. The people I want to be supported by in this current conflict are sitting here. And they are in Europe, they are in the States, they are among our friends with the Liberal Democrats. Yeah. You didn't know where I'm going with this story, right?
But talking about support, you have with Joe Biden right now, a president in the United States, one of those who is maybe even most pro-Israel from the Democratic Party. But also he's facing a lot of pressure within the American society. Do you fear or do you think that the support to Israel might decrease in the United States?
Well, I think this is something we need to address. You're right that there hasn't been a greater friend to Israel than Joe Biden in the White House ever. And the kind of support we got from him, which includes an open dialogue. And to me, I just came back from meeting with your national security advisor and with the vice chancellor, and a long conversation with the chancellor. And part of great friendship is an open dialogue. So I don't feel they are caving up on us. I don't feel that they are withdrawing from the support. I think we have an open dialogue about where is this going. I have open criticism on the Israeli government for not having a clear strategy of the day after, and I don't think I can be suspected for not being a good Zionist. So, so we need to have a strategy, and this strategy needs to be translated to what is happening right now with our soldiers and with the way we conduct ourselves through these times. And the fact that the Americans are asking questions is something they have completely gained the right to do with the unbelievable support they're giving us. So I don't feel we're being more isolated. I feel these are clarifying moments in our history when people understand. We have a better understanding now who our friends, who our true friends are, and who are not.
Okay. Let's look towards Israel. After the Hamas massacre, there were 240 hostages taken to Gaza. Around 100 were released. in return or in exchange to prisoners from Israel, Palestinian prisoners, and around 134 are still in captivity. Right now in Israel we're seeing also demonstrations of family members of those hostages and people who want to support them, and they're calling upon the government to bring their loved ones back home. Some of those protesters are also demanding a ceasefire. How does the government, from your point of view, has to react to that and to address their concerns? And also, are there further deals to free the hostages in prospect?
Well, by the way, this is the yellow ribbon that we use in order to show how much we sympathize and identify with the families of the hostages, and I urge anyone to wear them when possible. Israel was forced into this war with two goals. One is to eradicate Hamas, and the second is to bring back home the hostages. These goals are equally important, but not necessarily equally urgent. The most urgent thing is to bring back our children, our boys, our girls, our elderlies, the people who are being held hostages. I have said publicly, and I've told the Prime Minister personally, I said, the opposition will back you in any deal. We will not gain any political currency on the fact that you gave up or you gave too much. We will not do anything of the thought. We will back you up in everything, because this is the most important thing right now for the Israeli society. It's more than that. It's for the emotional well-being of the nation. Until we see them coming back home, we will be a wounded country. And it was a secret up until a few hours ago. It is not anymore, that the head of Mossad and the leader of Qatar is meeting in Warsaw today, trying to discuss what can be promoted, in terms of a deal. In my conversations with the German leadership, I've said, you've been helpful in negotiations before, and we will appreciate help in this situation as well. And we had a very positive discussions about the issue. So it's heartbreaking, and it's the number one goal of the country right now. And I was standing today in the hotel talking to one of the fathers whose son is in there, because he just needed a little bit of emotional help, and breaks your heart on hourly basis sometimes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the current state of the society in Israel? What is happening, or what has happened since October 7th?
We are sad. There is sadness. We were talking about this today, that when we left the airport. So there was the weather was, you don't get this in Israel, that the weather is kind of crispy. And so I opened the window and I looked outside, and there were people walking that don't know any hostage, and there were people walking who didn't hear sirens lately and didn't run to the bomb shelter, and there were people walking who didn't lose anyone they care about, and it was a bit weird. And just by coming here, I realized how sad my country is these days. So I know it's a weird thing to say about a country. I mean, it's something you say about a person, it's sad. But no, the country is sad. There is sadness in the air. It's thick in so many ways. And part of the sadness is not knowing where we're going. By instinct and by profession, it's weird, but I'm going to say something weird, but politicians deal better than most people with situations of uncertainty. It's part of what we do. This time, no, because the uncertainty is between bad choices and between one sad solution to another. And yes, just in case somebody asks himself, yes, we do care when we see picture of dead children in Gaza. We care about them. These are human beings, and we care about every human being, and no child is supposed to pay the price for grown-ups' wars. So there's just sadness, and we have to find a way to realize how to be hopeful again. Now, the hopeful thing I've been telling people is that we've been there before. We are the people who were hurt more than anyone else, and we always found ways to rise from the ashes. And sometimes you have to think not in yearly or monthly basis, but generational basis. So think of the generations I've described to you tonight. So my grandfather, who is killed in a concentration camp, and then my father, who is coming to a country of 600,000 people in 48, and they're starting to build a nation from nothing. And then I'm growing up in a country that is becoming this startup nation. And my son is making way more money than I do because he's a high-tech guy, and he's going to have his daughter in a West. So in this successful Western country. So in generational jumps, we're always capable of coming back better than we were before from all the blows and pains and scars that we have suffered. And I believe in this very strongly.
Thank you for pointing out this fascinating Jewish resilience, something that our people has. And I think that Israel is a place where you can feel that as strong as nowhere else. Which brings me also to the next question that you also mentioned, the current situation with anti-Semitism in Europe and in the Western world. In Germany, concretely after the 7th of October, there were homes marked with Magen David stars where Jews are living, pro-Palestinian activists and even Islamists are running through the streets and calling for the annihilation of Israel. Jewish students are being bullied, and some Jewish students don't even feel safe to go to universities anymore. How do you perceive that? How do you see that? How do you look on that from Israel?
I would say, well, first of all, at least one lie is out of the way. That there is a difference between anti-Israelism and anti-Semitism. It's the same thing. It's just a different expression of the same thing. And I think, Anna, you'd be a better judge of this than I am, because I was born in Israel. I met my first anti-Semite when I was 22. And
who was he?
It was just I was traveling, and it ended up with a glorious fight because I was young once, and I'm embarrassed to say that I beat the shit out of him. But when you do not grow up with something, you tend not to understand this emotionally. So I think you'll be a better judge of the question you've just asked. I don't know why is it they're so eager to find reasons to hate Jews. I don't know why is it all those people who are now talking in behalf of justice had nothing to say, I don't know, when President Assad killed 500,000 people. I mean, Hamas is claiming now 19,000 people died in Gaza. Now even they admit that thousands of them are Hamas terrorists. But let's say it's 19,000. This is a week in the Syrian civil war. This is 3 days in the Congolese civil war. And I didn't see them storming the streets of Germany or France or the campuses in the United States. So I assume you have to grow up with anti-Semites to understand why is it they are. I mean, in ways Israel was established for us not to understand, to say this is just so twisted and weird and there is no way of explaining this.
So you're here in Germany now, and as you know, in Germany also Karl-Heinz Paquet explained it earlier in his speech. In Germany, the security of Israel is a reason of state. What does this mean to you, and what do you expect from Germany?
Well, first of all, this is true. Whenever you walk into a room, and this is what I do, I mean, with German officials, and it doesn't even matter, or it almost doesn't matter which government it is. I mean, Merkel's, Schulz's, it's the same. There is real understanding. Always surprises me. The depth and how detailed the understanding is of the situation in Israel. It is rare. I mean, when I was, for example, foreign minister, or not to mention prime minister, you go and meet with people, and they know something. Israel is interesting. So they've know a couple of names. They can, you know, they locate us on the map, but they don't know. I mean, everybody's always preoccupied with their own domestic issues. And they care more about, I don't know, American politics. But here, you feel the understanding, you feel the caring, you feel the willingness to be proactive. I'm sitting today with your national security advisor. I give him a dossier of information we gathered on some issue and said, will you deal with it? He said, sure, why not? And you know he will, because he cares, because he thinks it's his business. So it's always, and I know that the German government is going to do whatever they can to help us with the hostages situation, to help us reshape the northern border, because we have a problem there with Hezbollah. I mean, it's really encouraging to be here and to have these conversations. So yes, Germany is it's no wonder it's the first country. I mean, after 73 days, it's the first country I visited after October the 7th.
Thank you very much for this conversation, for your time,
Anna.
and thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate that.